I want to give a big shout out and a big thanks to the Third Street Market Hall for allowing me to host the What's Your Motto podcast here. If you have yet to come down, please come down to patronize and check out the food and the entertainment here at Third Street Market Hall. Again, thank you. All right. So welcome back to the What's Your Motto podcast. Today, I have an intriguing guest here today. He and I just reconnected. Maybe it was like a week ago or so.
Yeah.
We were able to reconnect. And it's great to have him here. He's a father of 5, a husband, an author. We'll talk about that soon. And he's an educator, which is just wonderful to hear. And it's crazy how we end up coming back crossing paths because we both went to UWM. Which is a great thing. So please join me in welcoming Brendan Carlson. How you doing, B?
Thanks, man.
Good to
Thanks
see
for
you.
having me.
Good to see you. Good to
Yeah.
see you. How you doing today, man?
Doing good.
All right. You know,
I'm healthily nervous.
healthily nervous. That's
Yeah.
good though. That's good though. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Don't even worry about the cameras. You know what I mean? And like we were talking off camera, it's just great to have you here. It's great
Thanks,
to have
man.
you here. We were talking about the old school, the new school, things like that,
Yeah.
especially in terms of basketball. What is a gather step? All that good stuff. But more importantly, Brendan's enjoying his summer off
Yep.
as an educator, right?
Definitely, man.
And one thing he mentioned was he's been abusing his time a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some lost time in there.
Some lost time in there.
Taking it for granted for sure.
Absolutely. Man, I miss those breaks. And as the teachers get ready, I mean, it's almost that time to get ready to go back, right?
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Never, man. Never. we got a few days next week. I'm
Uh-huh.
already kind of. But there's a bit of excitement. There's a bit of rejuvenation there too.
Okay.
I think these breaks work.
To get back into it?
I'm fresh.
Okay.
For now.
For now?
Yeah. 2 weeks later, 2 weeks into the school year, I'm just gonna be wiped out.
Right. Then you got October.
Yeah.
Then you got Thanksgiving.
Yeah. There's a lot. To your point, there's a lot of built-in breaks. Can't get mad at the school schedule, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So for starters, for the viewers that may not know you, tell us a little bit about where you're from and what you do.
Sure thing. So I'm Brendan, and I grew up in Milwaukee. I grew up on the east side, and I work in education now. So I teach at a middle school. I teach college online also.
Yep.
And I'm just like a big education geek, kind of like yourself. So that's kind of how we reconnected.
For sure.
You have initiatives going on in schools, and you definitely care about schools.
Absolutely.
And same here. So me personally, I like having fun. Who doesn't? Right? I like getting out there, doing things with my family, traveling if possible.
Yeah.
I enjoy cutting hair. I enjoy stock investing as well.
Got you.
So that's something that's both a hobby, and then it, hops over into what I like to teach kids too.
Okay. So that's part of your lifestyle.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Part of your lifestyle. Okay. So for starters, how did you get into education? Like what made you, because I know like your background is in what, social work?
Right.
Right. Because you have a master's in social work.
Yep.
So how did you end up bleeding into the educational space?
I got a job at a college in Florida, and I did ADA law, or like ADA accessibility accommodations.
Okay.
So I got a job kind of as an advisor role.
Okay.
And it was social work, but it was in a school. And then you work at MATC.
Correct.
I work at a school very similar to MATC. So every day you go to work, it's like I related to working at like Mayfair.
Okay.
And you walk in and you gotta like move people out of the way to get to your office, right?
Whoa,
like,
yeah.
I gotta get out of my way. I'm embellishing a little bit, but I mean sometimes there'd be like hundreds of students in the lobby.
Got you.
And naturally there's tons of staff. So from working at a college and naturally networking every day, I ended up teaching at the college too. So that's maybe like, man, that's like 6 years ago now. I've been teaching at college. So when I came back up here, it was kind of a natural step to then enter like middle school education.
Got you. What do you see? So now that you're in education and things like that, what do you see? Because you've been a professor, or you are a professor still, and then you teach in a middle school. What have you seen, if you place them in like a dichotomy, what is the difference between teaching an adult and teaching a child?
Yeah.
I'm sure those methods are different in some aspects, some respects.
Yeah. It's interesting. Definitely a dichotomy there. A lot of similarities though too. And it may surprise you. And you've taught every level now.
Yeah, just about.
Yeah.
Almost.
right, the next one's coming, and
Yeah,
then there'll
yeah,
be no
yeah,
more
yeah,
levels left.
yeah. Yeah.
But for me, like some of the things that work, they work for both age ranges, which is interesting. So a
Mhm.
lot of times, just tossing something out and watching it go around the room.
Mhm.
I think sometimes as adults we think we can't do that with kids. We're like, we have to teach them, we have to at them, and then they'll know. But sometimes just putting it out there, just like with adults, they'll teach us a lot, and we'll walk away being smarter too. However, with kids, there's a lot of other stuff you got to deal with that you
Right.
don't normally have to deal with adults.
This is true.
Like so, maybe play fighting. Maybe the adults are not play fighting, and I
But
teach online anyway, so everyone's just at their own house
got you.
or wherever they're at. So that's like a nice luxury.
Right, right, right.
Yeah,
No, that's interesting. I've always thought about that because dealing with the elementary kid versus a high school kid versus adult, some things are different, but a lot of
yep,
times you find a lot of similarities, right?
it's crazy.
And they were once kids one day. Sometimes, at one
Yeah,
point the adults were. So it's like,
yeah,
yeah, you still got some kid residue in you. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So,
yeah,
um, so segueing, I know that you're a huge advocate for exposing students to different things beyond
yep,
just the regular curricula that we do on a daily basis.
yeah.
So financial literacy is your lane. So before we talk about the book and things like that, when were you introduced to the concept of like financial literacy, like as a young man?
Sure thing. So the wording or the verbiage, probably later on in life, like putting a name to it.
Right.
The concepts though from a very young age. So like
Okay.
from my family, from my parents,
Uh huh.
and from my grandfather, I learned about stocks even before I understood it.
Hmm.
I learned about it. I was in it. So my family had stock in different companies, and we would. This is so long ago. This was pre-internet, so we would have like a little sheet of graph paper that we would put on our refrigerator and track by looking at the newspaper. We would see the share price in the newspaper and update it on our graph paper on the fridge. So I can't remember what company it was,
That's
but it would go up to like,
ancient.
and that's all we knew. That was life. You turn on the TV, whatever was on the TV was what it was. If you didn't like it, you went outside.
This is true.
No cable, no DVR. So my early days, I learned about stocks. Didn't know what it was. I was interested,
Hmm.
and then I became uninterested. And I reflect on that later in life. I'm like, man, why didn't I throw money at Microsoft in the mid '90s, knowing what I knew?
Right.
Timing is an interesting thing. It wasn't time back then.
It wasn't timing. So how old were you when you took a look at the graph and you said looked at the newspaper and tried to
Yeah,
do that? Like, how old do you think you were?
young, probably early elementary
Okay.
years.
So early elementary years. And that's crazy because I don't even remember when I began even thinking about finances. Um, it was always work, put some money in a savings account. I did hear about like CDs and things like that. I've heard of the word stock, but I didn't had no education on it.
Yeah,
So now the fact that you you were introduced to it and exposed to it at a young age, but now you're in this position to kind of reach these young children, in which you
yeah,
have. And the name of your book is Financial Literacy, Middle School and High School Curriculum.
yep.
Correct.
How's that
Please.
for a boring title?
Hey, I
Couldn't
listen.
think of
It's
anything
on
else.
Apple Books.
It is on Apple
It's
Books.
on
Yeah,
Apple Books. I was looking around and checking it out and things like that. So it's on Apple Books. I'm not sure if it's on Amazon.
not yet. I had a hiccup.
Got you, got you. We talked about that, but it's on Apple Books. Make sure you
Yeah,
go get that financial literacy, middle school and high school curriculum. And as we move on to it, what made you write the book?
sure thing. So I got this fire a few months ago. I was like, I gotta write a book. I think initially I just wanted to have something in writing that I could reference. I was actually this upcoming year, I'm doing a class for the first time with eighth graders.
Yep.
It's a mandatory financial literacy course. The reason I'm doing it with them now is our upcoming freshmen in the state of Wisconsin, they have to take a semester of financial lit. So I was like, let's get our eighth graders ready. So all the concepts in the book, they mirror the Wisconsin Act 60 law,
Beautiful.
which kind of that outlines what high schools have to teach the freshmen or freshmen through seniors. At some point, you got to take a semester.
Right.
So I was like, let's get our eighth graders this. And in the school I work at, they're allowing me to teach a 1 day a week that financial lit is mandatory for eighth graders. I think that's the book. That's where the book originated from.
Uh huh.
Kind of grew into something else though. It's so short and so simple.
Hmm.
And I just want like every kid to learn about it. So I kind of tailored it toward teachers. It's just a guide versus really a book. It's only 9 pages long.
Beautiful.
You and I talked about how short ebooks can be sometimes.
Succinct. You got to be succinct, especially for the reader's attention nowadays. I mean, think about it. Think about it. It used to be long. I mean, you still have some long YouTube videos and some long books, but everything is in short form.
Yeah.
So how do we maintain the attention of a kid or even some of the teachers? Make it short and quick, straight to the point. So
absolutely,
that makes sense, man.
Yeah.
And tell them a little bit about. We talked about your after school program that you were doing. Was it last year?
Yep.
Last year, and how you have a gentleman or two that actually kind of like took it to the next level.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, Investment Scholars is the name of the after school club that I do.
Okay.
8 weeks long, focuses on a lot of financial concepts, but really mostly on stock investing.
Okay.
I feel like that's one of the most tangible things, especially for youth. If you have a Cash App, doesn't matter how old you are, purchase stocks.
True.
You can purchase fractional shares too. So the accessibility aspect is just crazy. And I love stocks anyway. So it really pushes stocks, and it really is just all about having dialogue about finances, because we don't always do that. I did that's kind of the first actionable thing I did surrounding financial literacy.
Okay.
Did it last year, piloted it. There was only 7 students. Most of them were 8th graders. One was a 6th grader. And the results were crazy.
And this was after school?
It was after school. So it was one day a week for 8 weeks.
Gotcha.
And part of the program was we used Investopedia, which is free. So the kids were able to place fake money into the real stock market in actual time. And their accounts went crazy. The average return on investment was 10%. But one kid, to your point, he got back, his value increased 27.5%. The same kid in real life really does this.
Right.
You know, I was talking to his dad, and he was like, oh man, he said, not listening to my son cost me $30,000. You know, like he would have made $30,000 more on an investment.
Had he listened to his son? Yeah.
And the kid's like 13, 14. So that experience, it blew me away. I mean, I was expecting that, because these kids, their ceiling is, there is no ceiling. Right. And we know that, yet they can still blow us away from time to time. So those results, I was like, that's solid. Mind you, these results were 5 months later.
Got you.
So it's not like they got lucky.
Overnight, it took some time.
Yeah, and they said it and they forgot it. And they all had different companies too in their portfolios.
Got you.
So I told one kid, I said, hey man, you're up $1,600. And I said, how long do you think you took to compile your portfolio, like do all the research and purchase those companies? He's like, man, I don't even remember doing that. And he's like, probably 3 or 4 hours. I said, well, let's put it at 4 hours and made $400 per hour so far. How does that feel? What do you think about it? And he said, it's cool.
It's cool.
Yeah. So, and I'm sorry, one of the biggest things too, as far as takeaways, was the kids' focus on risk mitigation.
Okay.
I would have thought, you know, when we're younger, we see the bigger things, the glamorous things, maybe. They saw their portfolios booming. They didn't take their eye off of risk. They're already thinking, like, even though I'm in 8th grade, hey, my first property, I want it to be an investment property, like a duplex or a side-by-side.
Got you.
And if I can get it turnkey, I want to.
Right.
And I want to have an airtight contract, because if someone puts a hole in my wall, like, they didn't lose sight of all these like seemingly adult concepts. That was probably my biggest surprise.
So they remain conscious of mitigating their risk the entire time. Like, okay, this will make sense. Like, they actually were critically thinking, right? About
way more than I ever have. Yeah.
And basically. These are 13-year-olds?
Yeah.
Talk about the advantages of actually exposing these young men or women or whatnot to this type of like language and these ideas and these concepts.
Yeah. I think just the potential for what they can do with it is everything. You know, the fact that they're already, you know, they may deviate from their plan.
Right.
But they have a plan now. Versus you and I, we were kind of talking off air. We're like, we didn't have plans. We just did. Yeah. You know, we were just watching and one street ball and trying to mimic that next
There
move.
You go.
You know, stuff like that, and throwing our favorite NBA jersey on.
Yeah.
But they have a plan to reference. So when they have the finances, they are in place to purchase a home. There's a chance that they'll stick to that plan and, you know, get that investment property and think in that way. Or ideally too, a lot of the kids in the Investment Scholars program, they're holding stocks already.
Okay.
And to me, when you know at a young age that you can own companies. You can own companies, you can own the bank. Just imagine what they'll do to your worldview. I imagine that there's a chance that that would change a lot of things, a lot of perspectives for young people.
Especially in terms of us always looking at it as being like the consumer.
Yeah.
And not being somebody that actually can drive the bus a little bit and invest and be influential in what's going on with a corporation, right?
Yeah.
Because I know I've only dabbled and dabbed just a little bit,
Yeah.
but I've done little things like stash, you know, acorns for the compounding interest here and there.
Yeah.
Um, I think I did like a 529 plan for like my son and things like that. You
Yeah.
know, little investment things like that. But
That's awesome, man.
I've never really truly delved into it. But I just think that it's I think it's because of how I was brought up though. Think about it, our age, you know, individuals our age, our parents taught us, a lot of us, to go to work, save, retire, you know what I mean? Those types of things. Now
Yeah.
it's like, hold on, I could have been putting this money away, even in college. You know what my economics teacher told me in college?
Yeah.
It was Econ 101. I think that's macro or micro. I can't remember which one it is. And he was telling, he's like, borrow. That's exactly what he told it. It's 500 students, and we're just in there trying to learn, you know,
Oh,
supply and
man.
demand. He's like, right now is a time. Obviously, it was what 2005, 2006, but he was
Sure.
like, just borrow right now, and I'm like, okay, you know what I mean? But that was the only thing that I knew in terms of that was a class I took, and that's the only type of literacy in terms of financials that I actually got and kind of tried to
Yeah.
understand. I tried to understand it, you know, the supply and demand and things like that. And he talked to us a little bit about stocks and investing and things like that. But that's the only thing I can remember was like borrow, and I was paying for college. So I'm like, oh, okay, get more loans to make sure I could pay off, you know, this type of
Sure.
stuff. But now I'm in debt. You know what I mean? But to be able to, for you to be able to talk to these young men about investing and the power of putting a dollar in here and then allowing it to gain interest or to, you know, up their percentages. Like you said, 27% is tremendous.
It's crazy.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And although it was for play,
Yeah.
it's in their mind, and now they can actually that see that you plan to continue to grow. And then, you know, look at the young man saying that like his father could have earned a little bit more money if how you listen to his son.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's just great. And I'm huge on exposure for the kids. You know, exposing them to different things, different concepts, besides just the confines of what our conventional or traditional education provides. So I think that's wonderful. That's another reason why I wanted to have you on. And just thinking about that, I know you do that in the school. Do you apply a lot of these principles and things in your home?
Yeah.
And I know you, your kids' age ranges, what are they?
So our oldest son is 15 and a half.
Okay.
And our youngest daughter is 5.
Okay. So the 15-year-old and things like that, you guys talk about that? Is
We
he
do.
interested?
He thinks it's boring right now.
He thinks it's boring right now?
Yeah, he's like, he understands the power of it.
Right.
And he sees it as fruitful.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, it's just not at this time interesting to me.
It's not interesting.
You know, my daughter, though, who's 12, she's highly interested in it. She's
Okay.
always checking it or asking to check her portfolio.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good.
And then the other kids, they just don't. My one son, he's almost 9. He told us the other day, he said, I've never planned anything in my life. And we're like, that is so cool. So he's definitely not thinking about money.
He wants to fly off the seat of his pants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're like, wow, yeah, you've never really, everywhere you show up at is because we've arranged it. So we thought that was super funny.
I mean, then again, at 9, I mean, like, video games, playing, eating, sleeping, just having fun.
You never know what day of the week it is, especially during summer. But he's always asking, is it Sunday? Is it Sunday dinner? Like, we ever spend time with our cousins, like my sisters and their kids?
Uh-huh.
He just assumes it's Sunday dinner because we do have Sunday dinner with them. So, and I'm like, no, man, it's Thursday. It's summer. So
the concept of time. So, so I know you do the literacy, the financial literacy and things like that. What else do you do in the school?
So I teach special education.
Special education.
Yep. So I float around. I do mostly math class.
Okay.
So I float around and provide various supports,
mm-hmm.
and then mess with the kids as much as I can.
Gotcha.
My office is across the hall from 2 basketball courts.
Okay.
So you think I'll be better at basketball? Like, I go in there, make or miss, I'm talking trash.
Right.
I go outside the other side of the gym.
Right.
So that's cool. That kind of sums up my day. I get to encourage kids a lot. work with different learning styles. And it's really cool.
That's good.
Yeah.
So how important has it been, like, even for you to be able to launch the after school program and even going forward now where you're going to be teaching that class? How important was it for you building those relationships with those kids and
Yeah.
even with and having the okay from administration?
It was big. It's interesting when you look back on things and like the order of events.
Right.
I'm sure like with this podcast space, you probably look back to when you decided like I'm gonna do it. And maybe if you ever quit at any point too, and you're like, oh, I'm not gonna do it, or I am gonna do it. With everything
Yes.
in life, it's always interesting to look at the action steps. So looking back when I decided to do the after school club, that was like the first piece, and I can't remember if I went back and forth on it, but ultimately I'm glad I did it.
Hmm.
And I was able to show it was proof that hey, our kids are more than highly capable, and we need this. And whenever you put some numbers behind it, that doesn't hurt.
Right.
Because then someone who's maybe not as familiar or maybe not as passionate or in a similar space, they can be like, hey, those numbers make sense.
Right.
So that caused some more research, caused the book, caused the class. It's kind of a wave that coincides with a lot of other waves because, like we kind of talked about, financial literacy is definitely a thing.
Yes,
It's a lot of
absolutely.
educators out here, like a lot of really good ones.
Hmm.
Yet the space is not saturated. We can have way more of it, especially in schools.
That's a real statement. Like now that I think back, because all my time in education, we've never had like a financial literacy class.
Yeah,
Just basic math stuff, and then you'll
sure.
have like real world problems for them to look at. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
A graph or something, percentages and things like that, but nothing in terms of stock investing, compounding interest,
Hmm.
or anything like that. So I wanted to champion you because when you told me that, I'm like, what? What I mean, because think about it, even like you said, now it's mandated in high schools
Yeah.
for them to have a financial literacy class. I remember, like when we were talking, I remember it used to be a time where you had driving school, you had home ec, you had a lot of these classes that students were required to kind of like take,
Yep.
or even had the option. A lot of those options are taken out. So now it's like they usually call it the pendulum swing in education,
Yeah.
where you're on one extreme, you get to the other extreme, and I think we're back swinging to where we're like inputting some of these applicable life skills back into the
Yeah.
system. And I hope that's where we're going, especially for the sake of the generation that we're raising up.
Yeah.
So with you teaching them financial literacy, allowing them to engage with it and interact with it is, I think it's amazing, because a lot of our kids don't get a chance to do that. And then
Yeah.
you're hunkered down in there, still teaching special ed and doing like that and talking trash to the kids, the relationships with the kids.
Yeah.
I think that's everything and that's wholesome. And sometimes we get tripped up. I don't know if you've heard education has so many catchphrases and
Hmm.
jargon where they talk about like teaching a whole child. But
Yeah.
if we look at it like you're actually attributing to that teaching that whole child, whether
Yeah.
it be just the regular conventional education, but also bringing this literacy piece in here, your expertise and things like that. And it makes my heart smile because
Yeah.
I know, and a lot of educators sometimes can feel somewhat defeated at times in terms of what
For
they
sure.
are able to do. And like you
For
said,
sure.
you took the action steps to put that forward and put some numbers behind it, be like, hey, this is why this is needed, and had it make sense. Not
Yeah.
everyone gets that go ahead.
Yeah.
So I know I applaud you for that. I
Yeah. I
really, really
appreciate
applaud
that,
you for
man.
that. And I hope that's encouraging for the other teachers too.
Yeah.
Step out and try to make those action steps.
Hmm.
So, one of the another bigger questions is, when we think about everything, what is your motive behind all of this? Like, what is
Yeah.
your motive? What is your why? What is your reason?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
No, for
Like,
sure.
as I was preparing for this, I was like, what's my motive? Like,
Yes,
and what a cool concept for a show.
absolutely.
Super dope. So yeah, for me, it's like given that I have some space in education,
Hmm.
I want to try to change things
Got
like
you.
you're talking about. A lot of the life skill stuff that maybe isn't in schools for whatever reason.
Hmm.
Some schools they don't have like art and music. It's like, man, so
Yeah.
and hopefully though the pendulum is like you said bringing a lot of those things back. But given that I have some space, is like how can I make education different? The kids have to be there for like 40 hours a week. And that's like a really long time.
Thinking
And
about
that's a whole conversation. We probably talked for hours about school. School is
what?
something else.
What?
School is something else. So it's like, how can we change the experience? And in their very near future, really in their now,
Right.
money's at every corner. We're dealt a lot of money decisions in life.
Yes.
And yeah, we don't talk about it as much as we can. Money's really interesting too. And I think in the after school club, I threw out like a Coke versus Pepsi question.
Okay.
Kids went crazy on it. And it surprised me, because I'm slowing down now physically, everything. I'm 36. I know we're relatively close in age.
Right. I'm 37 today.
Happy birthday, man.
No, it's crazy, right?
Wow, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely happy birthday.
Yeah.
But as we slow down, sometimes stuff is interesting to us, but maybe not the kids. So that's
Right.
one of the things I threw out. And I'm like, I don't think they care about this. And they loved it, man. They're breaking down all these different aspects of the different company, their brand, their power, their space in the market, and who they would buy and why.
Okay.
And man, I had to rein it back in, So, oh, that's so crazy. I even forgot what your last question was.
What's your motive? I mean, you kind of talked about the impact, and you were just gonna keep going, keep
Sorry,
going.
I got far off of it, but
No problem at all.
I think that's the motive. It's just making space for it and seeing what the kids do with it. I think your birthday might have thrown me off. Something threw
No,
me
that
off
probably
there,
did. No worries, because I was listening to you. I was following you the whole
Yeah, yeah.
time, and although I did ask that question, another question popped in my head. So it's
Yeah.
just like, how is it to actually see these kids? Like you said, you bring up this question about Coke versus Pepsi.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you did, but maybe you asked like, which one tastes better? I don't know. But beyond that, they're talking about, and they're analyzing why I'm gonna pick this versus this. Like, what is that like? How does that feel to you to see them engaging in such rich discussions about things that I would say matter?
Yeah. It makes me hopeful and excited.
Uh-huh.
And it's lovely when the kids do the job for you.
Yeah.
Or the adults.
Right.
Back to college, it's funny because you said we all got some kid in us. What's funny is, and interesting, a lot of the students are much older than I am.
Uh-huh.
I teach a class, it's like a human services
Okay.
class.
Yep, I seen that.
A lot of people are taking human services because they're transitioning from another career. So maybe they were in like cosmetology, maybe they're in the healthcare field, maybe they were in banking, finance.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, I don't want to do that anymore. I've done that for 20 years. I want my second career. Then there's some young people too.
Yep.
People take it for a variety of reasons, but I see a lot of crossover. And people are like, hey, I want to do something else. I want to help people in a way. That makes a lot of the students older than me.
Uh-huh.
So a lot of time, it's intimidating too. But it can work in your favor as a teacher.
For
Because
sure.
I'm like, sometimes you got to step back and realize that you don't have to be an expert. Like, I'm not a finance expert. That's one of the best things.
Say that again, man.
Yeah, you don't have to be an
You don't
expert.
have to be an expert.
You got to be okay with failing. You got to fail forward.
Yep.
And just trust that whoever your audience is, like, they'll take what they need to take.
Yep.
It'll probably surprise you what they take. Like, what the gem is. I'm like, you thought that was interesting? You thought what? I actually did a podcast a couple weeks ago with an old coach of mine.
Uh-huh.
And I told him, I was like, man, you did this thing when we were in the locker room. You would write out, it was a green board with white chalk at the time.
Old school.
It's probably 2000. I'll put it like 2003. I don't remember what the year was.
Old school.
It was 15 players on the team. I was at the bottom of the 15, which is fine. I was just happy to be there.
Right.
Before the game, he would write out 1 through 15, the lineup, including 11 through 15. And he's like, hey, you may not play. 13 through 15, you're not going to play. But I'm telling you now, it's no surprises. And I remember thinking that was so cool. And he got that from one of his coaches. And as like a 15-year-old, I remember being like, wow, where's his coach now? And does he know that he's doing this? So I told him on the podcast, I'm like, hey, shouts out to you for a variety of reasons. But that was one of the coolest things ever. He said, wow. He said, I had no idea. That's what we do. We drop random things.
Mm-hmm.
Kids put it in their toolbox, and then they hit the road. So yeah, it gives me hope, and it's exciting.
That's beautiful, because he left an indelible mark on your mind, and I'm sure you're doing that with these kids. And tell me if you agree or not. I've always, whenever I talk to like different teachers, especially like more so like first year teachers and things like that,
yeah.
And sometimes they have like classroom management issues or just trying to figure out how to, how it goes. I'm sorry to bring down the jargon. I'm not a man of
It's real.
there you go. You know,
Yeah, you got to do it.
right? Yeah. So I always tell them like, you're gonna be planting these seeds and trying to do these things for these kids, and it's gonna feel as if they're not listening, they're not paying attention, even if you're trying to expose them to it, they're not, you know. Yeah. But you are planting a seed in which you may not be able to see the fruits of that labor. Someone else may be able to reap that and see that. So long down the line. So like you said, your coach got that from his coach. Maybe he knew that he understood it and was, you know, took a hold to it during that time, but maybe he didn't. You told your coach what he did played a part in that. Did you tell him during that time?
No.
No. But look at that. It comes back like full circle. And sometimes, and I can appreciate that, man, because I'm looking back on some of my students and I'm like, oh my gosh. But you end up getting that reconnection and they're either texting you, contacting you on social media about different things. Shout out Fabe. I got to send him a book. He reached out to me yesterday. So I got to send out Fabe. So that's just wonderful to hear that continues to be a cycle of something that continues to go on, especially in education, with all the other distractions and things that go on. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I love that. I love that. So before we get out of here, what are you looking forward to with your class going into this year? Like, what is your biggest hope? I know you're a cautious optimistic, but I know that you're a trailblazer as well.
Thank you, man. I'm looking forward to the unknown. I'm just expecting greatness, though.
Okay.
You know, especially with that, although it's a small pilot program, I think it's definitely representative. I think it could definitely be generalized. Like all our kids, we got to put it in their hands.
Gotcha.
You know, our kids are way more capable than I'll say personally I was.
Right.
But I wasn't ready for this stuff, man.
No, not at all.
But they are. It was so the kid that made a whole bunch of money and whose dad didn't listen to him. I'm doing aftercare. It's like just, you know, aftercare. Kids just staying up after school. And this other kid comes up to me. He did not do investment scholars, but he's friends with the kid. He shows me his phone. He says, "What does this mean?" He said, he told me to buy NVIDIA on Friday. It's now Monday. So he put $6 on NVIDIA. It went up 227% by Monday. And his $6 turned into $18. He goes, "What is this?" He said, "I just did it because he told me to." I said, "Well, it's good, is what it is." I said, You're up about triple. And he's like, "What does that mean?" And I said, "Well, when's the last time you made a free $12? And he named a bunch of stuff where he fee for service, where he worked for it. Right. I said, "No, man. When's the last time you made a free $12? I said, "That's what you just did." And he said, "Well, now what? So do you want the money? Or do you want to just keep it? You want to hold the value? You want to hold the stock, or you want to sell it?" And he was like, I don't know what he did ultimately, but small things are like, if we get this in the kids' hands, it's going to go crazy.
Yes.
In a good way.
And that conversation just shows me that you were changing that brain, molding that brain to think differently. Because like you said, he was looking at it like $6 or $18. What have you done to get a free, you know, $12 or whatnot?
Why would my money have grown? Because nothing works like that, that we're told of.
Right.
Right. And stocks, finances in general is such an obscure term.
Yes.
It's scary.
Yes. Yes,
it's loaded.
Yes.
And it's not meant to be accessible. So when you unlock it, who knows what's going to happen?
Who knows? Yeah. I'm excited for you. I wouldn't mind even be able to stop by and to, you know, check out one of your classes for like 10 minutes or so.
For sure.
I'd see if MATC would be gracious enough to let me leave, or I'll just put it in. I got a meeting or something. You know what I mean? I'll make it work, but I would love to see you in action. But I'm looking forward to that. I'm happy for you. And I appreciate you taking the time to come talk to me, man.
For sure.
I really, really appreciate it. So my man, Brendan Carlson, please check out his book, Financial Literacy Middle School Guide. We're going to call it guide, like you said. Yeah. I'm sorry. Financial Literacy Middle School and High School Curriculum. My man is doing great things here in the city in regards to that, continuing to try to forge partnership and relationships so we can continue to put this out there for the young individuals within the city. Just really trying to be impactful, like he said, and make some change and get these kids to think differently. Big shout out to Ape Mode Apparel. My boy Ray hooked me up with a shirt today. Nice. I'm very, very happy about the shirt. I love it. Tie-dye is a little different for me. But shout out to Ape Mode Apparel for providing me with the shirt. And until next time, what's your motive?